Cuba is a part of my heritage. Since the day I was old enough to understand that my father was not born in the U.S., but from a tropical island that brought such happiness to he and his family, and also a tremendous amount of pain and loss. I knew Cuba through pictures, traditional Cuban food that my Granny Lily used to cook, and the smells of cigars in the house. When I turned 24, the news broke about that Cuban boy named Ilian floating to the shores of Miami in a smaller inner tube and then directly sent back to Cuba. His father was in Miami. Why is this happening to this 5-year-old boy who suddenly got shipped back to Cuba? Well, it really sunk in for me. Cuba was a communist country led by Fidel Castro since the revolution in 1959. When he and Che Guevara overthrew the regime run by Batista, Castro was the one that truly changed it for our family. There's this tremendous amount of interest to learn more about how my family in Cuba was connected to Batista, not by choice, but by politics. It was still this idea that Cuba is the forbidden fruit, but that's what made it so exciting to go. We were ready to go through hoops, traveling to Cuba, and we knew that we'd find more gems and connections like these. The truth must be told, and by one man, my father, through his eyes, as a 12-year-old boy who was abruptly sent to the U.S. without warning.
You know, he had crawled up a water tower behind the property by the house, and he had fallen off the water tower and broke his arm. He was in a cast that day, and everybody was swimming in the water except him because he had his cast on, so he was on the dock. And that was the day that Fidel came to the dock and actually walked right past him because he was the only one not swimming. So literally just brushed across him and kept going. And there's a plaque commemorating the day that Fidel came to the bay here. It's still there.
His yacht was anchored right off the coast right there, and he came on a tender, and he docked on the pier, and he walked right by me. The story I tell is that I could have pushed him overboard and drowned him, and I would have changed world history. But then I wouldn't be here to tell you the story if that had happened.
I felt it was so important that we visit the Revolution Museum in Havana. There's no history books or anything in the U.S. that really told the story the way Cubans saw the revolution, whether it be prior to the administration that was connected prior to the revolution or during the revolution or post-revolution. And I remember, making sure that my father was okay with going to this museum because I know at first he was very reluctant, but I couldn't visit this museum without him.
After Batista left and Fidel was coming down from the mountains, I have some very vivid memories of the men with their beards, dressed in the fatigues, riding on tanks. And shortly after that, Fidel declared a general strike that everything shut down in the country to show support. In those days, people didn't keep that much food on hand, so after a while there was a great deal of scarcity. And fortunately for us, we had the cannery, La Reina del Caribe, that made the tuna, so we had an abundance of tuna. And my mother was a great cook and very resourceful, and we had tuna croquettes, we had tuna salad, we had tuna this, we had tuna that. So at this point in my life, I can pretty much do without creamed tuna. Carlos Guas, we call him Carlitos, he was the son of Felo Guas, the vice president of Cuba. He was a representative. He was an attorney also. And then when the time came for the Bay of Pigs, he signed up to go fight. And he was actually killed during the invasion. His body was never recovered. My dad spent a lot of time looking to see if he could find his body. He interviewed a lot of the prisoners. The vast majority of the people at the Bay of Pigs were taken prisoner. There were very few casualties. The one person heard him scream during the night, and that's the last we know of him. Very tragic story.
He's got plywood, so it's definitely. Our first course. Lunch, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We're at 26 Julio, the anniversary of the revolution. So the first dish that they served us was a soup that commemorates and celebrates the revolution. There's yuca, camote, yuca, frijoles, vegetable soup. It's delicious.
Bueno, this was my school. El Instituto de Educación Integral. My class through school year 58, 59, I pulled out that, and then 7 years before that. Whatever. What they've done is they've turned it into a multiple, house dwelling. I mean, a number of different people live there. I guess, since the population has really grown in Havana, they need places for people, so that's what this place is. All right, so you see this door, this opening underneath that? Okay, so that was where the cafeteria was in this building. Okay. And for the dining room. And that room upstairs is where we practice music.
Front upstairs?
Yeah. So we're up there, kind of bored, And if you see the opening down below, that's where the cafeteria was. So one day we were up there. I used to play the clarinet. So I stuck my head out the window and I spit. And out came the teacher, and it landed right on her head. I got punished. I was supposed to stay after school. I was so embarrassed, that I just got on a school bus at the end of the day and went home. And then, of course, I got in more trouble. And then you might ask me, did I do it on purpose? Well, I'm not going to say one way or the other at this time. That's that story. So I had made up my mind on this trip that I was going to find my family's medical clinic. On the one side, they had the orthopedic guys, and on the other side, they had the pediatricians. So we were told that there was a man living in the back of the building that had worked with the doctors back in the 50s. And I recognized him. He was Avi's assistant. Avi was Dr. Albert Inflan. And the two of them, they took care of me when I broke my arm. They set my arm and put it in a cast. He had been a very, very loyal to our family. Even when we had some hard times. And I was very grateful to have this opportunity to thank him for all the loyalty and the friendship that he had shown to my family. This was the only time that I connected with anyone associated with my family on this trip.
The Cuban people are so gracious and generous and open and passionate. What's your favorites?
Well, the first cigar I ever smoked in my life, and I can't tell you how old I was. I may have been about 8 years old. And my father came in.
8 years old.
Well, 8 or 9, okay, maybe 7. I don't know. And so we go. He'd come in from a banquet or luncheon or something. He laid down to go take a siesta, and he had a cigar sitting right there in the ashtray. So I went over there and I started puffing on it. My mother said, "Oh, you want to smoke a cigar? I'll fix you."
Busted.
Well, and that was her way of course, she was going to teach me a lesson. Well, she gave me one. And the first one I got, I started chewing on it. So I got it all messed up. She gave me another one. Smoked that and everything. And, well, I did turn green and got sick. And, but then, not to be defeated.
Right.
I said, "Give me one of those cigarettes of yours." So then I smoked one of her cigarettes. My arrogance has been permeating through me since I was a little young upstart.
Right.
So, but that was my first cigar. And then later on, my dad woke up. He was mad. He was real mad because we smoked this good cigar. Now he wasn't mad that I was smoking it. He was mad that I smoked his cigar, his good cigar. When I was a young boy, they would have the Cuban Grand Prix. These were Formula One cars, and they would run. The route was down the Malecón, and I would come up here with my father and my brother and a bunch of other men, and they would have box seats at the Hotel Nacional overlooking the Malecón. We'd spend the day there, just having a good time. They'd be eating and drinking and while the cars would go by. Brett was right in there with them. I think one year Fangio won, and then the next year Sterling Moss won. And the reason Fangio didn't win the second year was that he got kidnapped. The day before the race, they kidnapped him, and then of course they turned him loose the next day. But it was one of those things that happened over here. So yeah.
Traveling back to Key allowed us to break barriers and open doors that we would not be able to open otherwise. And a lot of meetings with the chefs and interaction with the locals there was a lot of reluctancy to share their story and to really allow us into their sort of businesses, homes, restaurants. And just after a couple minutes of either smoking a cigar or drinking a Cuban coffee or having a little sip on añejo, some rum, it didn't take long for them to really open up, share their story, their real story, of what it takes to open a business and what it takes to be a chef in Cuba and access to ingredients and the struggles that they've had, but at the same time, always smiling, always sharing more. And to me, that was the ultimate sort of exchange. Departure day, we're leaving. Obviously, we'll be back. There's something about being here with my father really feels like I'm home. This trip is over, but there's so much more to explore. Travel with us back to the next Forbidden Feast.